Good morning, everybody. Um, how diverse is the digital infrastructure industry? On the face of it, a really straightforward question, one that theoretically is answered with a suitable objective, followed by a statistic as evidence. For example, 2023 tech report shared that women hold 26.7% of tech employment, while men hold 73.3% of these positions. However, I'm not sure what that actually tells us. Does that make the industry not diverse, quite diverse, very diverse, or does it just tell us the gender makeup of the industry at a particular time when the survey was completed? To ask how diverse is to assume that there are characteristics and quotas that measure what diverse looks like, and more worryingly, what good looks like. And it's in my opinion that many in our industry and those that are connected are looking at diversity as a series of quantifiable statistics, most notably around gender and age. With this lens, the process to include can often become one that results in actions that actually drive segregation. I say this boldly as a 30-something British Asian woman, having worked in the industry for some time, to be mindful that our language and our actions do truly integrate. So it's apparent that the question really isn't as clear cut, which is why perhaps the topic is one that continues to be discussed, debated, and somewhat documented. I hope to spend the next few minutes sharing with you why the question is not just one of diversity, but also inclusion, and how we as an industry may be in fact trying to address symptoms that are somewhere rooted elsewhere entirely. Before we do that, I'd like to thank all at Data Center Review for the opportunity to kick off this year's Critical Insight. My name, as Kayla mentioned, is Adelle Desouza, and I'm honoured and proud to be an advisory board member for the Data Center Alliance, the UK trade association for the data center industry. With my professional career across digital infrastructure, I've been fortunate enough to work across digital infrastructure. I've been with data centers, telecommunications, cloud, and cybersecurity, from England to Australia, and now here in Ireland. Since starting in the sector, I have been blown away by the opportunity it has to all involved. And as an advocate for careers education and guidance, the two gave rise to me founding my own organisation, Hire, some 6 years ago. And we're dedicated to supporting the journey from studenting to adulting and all that may mean. But back to the topic at hand. We need to look no further than any WhatsApp group that anybody on this call is part of to agree that diversity in thought, diversity of personalities, perspective, and practices is actually what makes things happen. I look to my own friendship group, and there are those that book the flights, those who check the weather of our destination, those who look at the vaccinations to ensure we can go in the first place. The list goes on, but of course, on the face of it, we may not be considered diverse as per current definitions in our industry, as we're all the same age and identify as the same gender. But the differences that we represent are important. And there are hundreds of studies that have shown that diverse thinking does indeed translate into the workplace, driving profitability, innovation, and a sense of belonging when we embrace and celebrate differences. For us and as an industry, to move away from addressing symptoms of not welcoming differences, we need to firmly decide that we're not going to continue to do things the way that we currently are. We as an industry need to review our barriers to entry and our reasons to remain. The former, addressing the funnel, as we know it is not filling up, and the latter, and possibly more scary at times, to aid the fact that we have a leaky talent pipeline, spurred by, as documented by the Uptime Institute, of the grey tsunami in retirements that are sure to come our way in the next few years, as well as other industries that are not necessarily poaching, but certainly welcoming and being more attractive to talent that we've currently addressed and trained. It's worth noting that when I think about talent in our sector, it's not just the technical side, but also the business disciplines as well. Engineers, STEM, operations are all highly, highly important, critical roles in our industry, as are procurement and legal and HR and marketing, all that require that diverse element of thinking to drive innovation and change. So what does this mean in real terms? It means we need to stop focusing on numbers, figures and facts as the first port of call, but rather processes, policies, and practices that arguably are entrenched with our own unconscious biases. It means, and I take all of these from experiences that I've had, some more recent than others, it means we have to ensure that we don't assume if we see a young person at an event, they're only there because they're part of a climate change action group. It means that we remove location-based in-person interviews that could be financially unaffordable for some. It means we look for speakers, authors, and content contributors outside of our go-to networks. It means that we ensure our event venues are accessible. It means that we don't focus our social events just around alcohol or stereotypical sporting activities. It means we build flexible working hours. COVID has proved and demonstrated that the element of hybrid working not only drives productivity at times, but also allows those to embrace other aspects of their lives, their home lives, their social lives, their sporting lives, as well as their working lives. It means we build benefit packages for all walks of life. A pension for some is a travel loan for others. It also means that we look at representation. We know that representation matters, so reviewing and building and encouraging policies and practices that make individuals feel seen is massive. Alongside representation does come awareness. And I look back a couple of football seasons ago as a big football fan, and following the Women's Euros, the UK showed there was a 140% increase in participation levels in the season following the tournament. This is 2.3 million more women playing the sport post-tournament compared. The awareness and representation was second to none for the sport outside of the usual fan base. So representation and awareness matters. And sticking on the theme of football, because it is such a big passion of mine, just recently finished watching Welcome to Wrexham, which many of you might be aware of, given it's the football club that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney bought a few seasons ago. And they really focus on representation within their own fan base as well. Quiet zones and areas for those that struggle with autism at times, but also opportunities for transportations for away games for those that required accessible access. So we need to do more to have representation and awareness outside our industry. There is a sense at times that we really enjoy talking about how great our industry is to those that are already working in it. We're possibly using platforms that a particular demographic or generation uses. I recently did a talk that looked at how active we all were as an industry on LinkedIn by comparison to the likes of Instagram and TikTok and Be Real, and looking at the different demographics and different audiences and the way that they consume content. We're not as great at driving activity at grassroots, nor amongst other industries for those transferable skills that no doubt would bring elements of change and diversity and inclusion to ourselves. I'm really mindful that this session also is not just to call out the things that we have to do, and also the things that we may not be doing just perfect, but also as an opportunity to highlight those things that are working and that we can all learn from. We are seeing greater awareness in schools and initiatives taking place. One very close to my heart is the Rising Stars in Schools campaign. We are seeing groups come together to review how we train and upskill through simulation environments, moving away just from traditional online watching and virtual reality. And then, of course, the more traditional apprenticeship and post-university programs. We're seeing leading recruiters use impact assessments and not just tenure in the industry as a guise as to the impact an individual could have. And we're seeing the modification of recruitment processes to support the neurodiverse, where our traditional practices may not have been as adaptive to the environments to which they will thrive in. There is, of course, another approach entirely that we could take, right? And that's to do absolutely nothing about it whatsoever in this part of the world, to continue doing what we're doing, hopefully not expecting different results, of course, because that is the definition of insanity. But my fear and experience is that other countries, governments, and academic institutions will. And they will not hesitate to be more inviting, more welcoming, and more approachable to the talent pool that we currently have within digital infrastructure. Now, there is the optimist in me that's seeing the topic discussed, being welcome to open events just like this one, and that the industry does want to drive change. So I guess my overarching advice is to be the change, is to be the individual that questions and queries processes, to be the team player who keeps an eye out of practices that may not be as inclusive. And we're seeing that now. I see it a lot more within my own network, where they're looking at their own children, nieces, nephews, neighbours, and saying, oh, yes, we don't have a programme that might welcome them, or we don't have an opportunity for those that haven't secured particular grades or have started a different career or are returning to work having taken parental leave. So try and be that person that questions. But I think most of all is to be the person in our industry that you would have wanted somebody else to have been for you when you were looking for opportunities. I recently read, unfortunately, quite a sad and disgruntled post by an individual who felt that under the guise of diversity, they were being pushed out of their role. Because they weren't ticking enough on diverse boxes, which is something we have to be so careful of. So careful of. But I'm really, really mindful that I wanted to keep this session very short and sweet, to welcome out for some questions. I wanted to extend once more huge thanks to the organisers at Data Centre Review, the team here specifically working on critical insight, and of course my colleagues at Data Centre Alliance for the opportunity. I do believe there's some excellent speakers, presenters with some truly thought-provoking content over the next few days that will help our industry, not just to survive, but to thrive against the challenges that we face. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and open the floor to any questions or comments that there are for the audience.
Thanks so much, Adelle. I'm definitely the flight booker in my WhatsApp group to an annoying extent. There's always one. That was really great. Just a couple of follow-up questions. So sort of in your own experience, I know this is like a, going to be an anecdotal thing anyway, but do you think things are changing? Because everyone talks a lot about what we should be doing and how we can change things, but what's been your personal experience?
I think they're changing, but too slowly for it to have the impact that we need it to have. I think where we're seeing the tip is interesting. We're seeing lots of people wanting to drive the change, because this isn't an industry change, right? Sometimes we blame the industry. The industry is made up of organizations, which are made up of people. So I tend to see the change come when those people are directly impacted. So when they're looking for something different in the workplace, when they're looking for hybrid working, when they're looking for roles and responsibilities and opportunities for their family members, that's where we're seeing it change. It's not as fast, I was like, and it's not as deep rooted. There's a lot of lip service to the topic, I think, and I've definitely said it before. There's a lot of LinkedIn liking on the topic, and I think everybody wants something to happen, but they'd really like if somebody else could make it happen and they could stay with their day jobs, which I totally understand. The pressures on the talent that we have in the sector are so high. We have a small pool, we have a lot to deliver. So I do understand it, but I think the needle could move faster and more significantly if we were more collaborative on actions on this topic rather than discussion.
I mean, I suppose it's similar to that big buzzword of sustainability, skills gap. It's the same thing. We all want to be doing the right things, but we want someone else to show us where to go. So, I mean, on that, what do you think management could be doing? Because obviously it comes down to people and everyone's really busy and everyone's got their days full of stuff. So how can we be working from sort of the company side to be doing those small incremental things that are actually going to make a difference?
Yeah, I think where I've seen it works really well in organizations I've been part of, it's the small policy changes. It's the small practices. I think there is a worry that, to do this, we must have a military program. We must have an apprenticeship program. We must, must have everything tomorrow. There are things that individuals can do that will help. So some of the things that I've seen work really well, parental policies. I know that certainly in the UK, maternity leave is something that's very heavily talked about, but perhaps not as much paternity leave. So wider parental policies can help. But also putting your hand up to be the one to go on, I'll do that. I'll take a work experience session. Again, it doesn't have to be a 6-week program. It could just be a couple of days of either letting somebody shadow or saying, hey, set you up with a conversation for you to speak to so-and-so for 5 or 10 minutes that might give you some insight into the industry. So I think there's small things that everybody can do. And I don't think it's just the responsibility of one department or one management level, or indeed one area of the business.
And we do seem to be sort of going through a nice sort of period of time where there's a lot more awareness of the industry and what data centers do and how it actually applies to you in your real life. Because a few years ago, a lot of people just have no idea how that relates to what I'm streaming on the TV. And then COVID happened and suddenly we're all experts. So we kind of have this opportunity here, would you agree? Especially of this, because we're also on this cusp of kind of changing the sort of PR image of the data center sector, which is this energy guzzling, thing. So we've got a skills gap, we've got a PR problem, we've got all these issues going on. So this seems like it could be a real opportunity to kind of go and say, look, you can be part of this really diverse, interesting industry. And as you said, not just as an engineer, there are so many different career paths that you can go down. So how can we sort of get that out there that you don't have to just be, an engineer or someone working? You could be doing PR. There's so many different things you could be doing within the sector.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think some of the issues we have to tackle head on. I think some of them around. I talk quite openly that the next generation is probably a lot more climate conscious than we might have been historically. And we need to address those concerns really clearly, really concisely, and not using buzzwords. We need to share, facts with not just in PR, but with climate change groups and online, that we can kind of say these are the realities and this is what we're working towards. And then in terms of talking more about the opportunities, is to talk about it in our own networks, is to try and have a route, and we do this a little bit with the Rising Stars program that I run. We do it a little bit with current new professionals to the industry, going and talking to students, going, hey, I was sat where you were a few years ago. So I think it's about trying to be really relatable. I think there's the fear. And I think everybody can say this, that if your mum or dad tells you to do something, no matter what age you are, you're probably not going to take it as well, as if your peer group says it. And that's again in every category, whether that's age that you look at, whether it's gender that you look at, whether it's neurodiversity. I think it's really, really important that we don't get too hung up. And I'm really mindful of the tick boxes. And we are a lot more broad with our communications.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? It's so easy to tick that box and then not worry about it and to get on with your actual job, and not worry about it. So just kind of, this is a really difficult question to ask, and really general. But if we don't, as you speak about, if we don't do anything about it, if we just sit on this like we do with a lot of things and think, okay, this is urgent, but not that urgent, we can get around to it, we've got plenty of time. What will happen, say, in the next sort of 10 years? You've got this skills, crisis coming on. What was the term? The grain
tsunami. The grey tsunami.
Terrifying. A terrifying image. But we've got that approaching. So if we don't do anything, what's going to happen to the sector?
Geographically, we'll see a massive shift, because I've been really fortunate to have worked in Australia and here now in Ireland, and other countries, some parts of the sector are doing it. The Australian government is putting funding into digital skills. There are other academic institutions across Europe that are bringing in more employer engagement. They're calling for it. We can choose to do nothing. And I think, there is a super skeptic, a teeny tiny one inside me there, that sometimes goes, maybe our industry at the moment doesn't want to because it doesn't serve a purpose. That we are all individuals. We do have our, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we have our psychological and sociological bits ticked. Maybe we don't need to do the next bit. So we can do nothing. I'd hate to see it. We can do nothing, but we will struggle, because other parts of the world, the industry is sustainable, right? As you said, it's part of the digital economy in every way. It's just where it is that makes the biggest difference.
And so, do you think sort of government has a role to play? I know it's a difficult one, because how much I know, but I do know that they're trying to kind of upskill when it comes to tech within the government. So is there anything they could be doing to incentivize people or increase awareness?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture. I think between there's the government angle, there's the academic institutions, although personally, I'm not sure that a certificate means, we have a certificate, thus we have the problem fixed. I don't think there's a silver bullet. And I don't think, the government just coming in and saying, right, well, you must all do this, because what happens is we take it from elsewhere, and in 3 years' time, it's affected another industry that we rely on. So I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I do think that we could hopefully talk to our local MPs around the importance of getting the message right when it comes to our industry. And having those conversations that overlap with other parts of society, whether that's sustainability or climate change or investment. I think that there needs to be a broader conversation that we have there, so they're more involved. It does seem a little bit too siloed at the moment.
I know, it seems obvious to say, but it is going to be important for the industry to adapt to the way the world changes. Like you said, the younger generation is more sustainably minded, they're more conscious of the environment, and if we're going to survive in this world, we need to sort of latch on to people who are thinking sustainably when they're thinking about how to design a data center or what we could be doing. All of these things are going to play into each other.
And I think we need to do, because there's some awesome technologies that are out there, and there's some great providers that are leading the way in that innovation, but we're just not very good about talking about it to people outside of our industry.
Yeah.
And we do like being a little bit of a clique, and a little, pat on the back from me to you and you to them. I think we need to do a better job of responding publicly to certain things that happen, to go, okay, well, this is what we're driving, this is the change we're driving, these are jobs that we're creating. And I think then we'll begin to see a bit of a shift from that as well.
Okay, Adelle, that was really great. Thank you so much for kicking us off today. That was a really interesting chat. Thank you for joining us. I will let you go on about the rest of your day, but thank you again for talking us through that.
Thank you very much. Take care all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.